Hello, Guitar Smarts fans. Before you check out this podcast, I want to make you aware of a cool new place where you can interact with other Guitar Smarts listeners. It's a Facebook group called the Guitar Geek Hangout. That's where we hang out and talk about all things guitar. So, if you like the Guitar Smarts podcast, come and chat with Kieran and myself over in the Guitar Geek Hangout on Facebook. Maybe check out some pre-podcast clips and even get involved in asking and answering lots of questions from the other page dwellers. Hope to see you there.
I mean, it is one of the best pieces of guitar playing ever laid down, for sure, by an absolute master. I agree with you. I'll tell you what it reminds me of. Oh, people are going to hate me for this. It just reminds me of, like, every time I hear it, it reminds me of, like, Bill and Ted. I mean, I love the solo. It is epic, right? But all I think about is just like, it's just like every Bill and Ted sketch, like, concertinaed into one. It's
Greetings, welcome to another episode of the Guitar Smarts podcast. Thank you so much for downloading. Hope you're well. This week, Kieran and I decided, because we enjoyed ourselves so much last week when we were talking about the greatest, the most iconic guitar-based song intros that we love and that we think are kind of objectively pretty good intros, we thought, let's carry on with that theme and think about guitar solos as well, from each genre as well. So we looked at rock, pop, jazz, country, blues, and, you know, we wanted to kind of come up with a list of songs or guitar solos that we think are the best up there, or at least our favourites, as well as objectively what we feel are the best to listen to. And wow, I really over-explained that. So anyway, this is a list of our favourite guitar solos across different genres. As we did last week as well, there's a Spotify playlist that has been made so that you can find all of these different tracks. Just click the link in the description to the Spotify playlist and enjoy listening to some fantastic music with some excellent guitar solos in it. As always, you can find us and you can communicate with us on our social media pages. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/Guitar Smarts, and we're on Instagram as well. And you can find us on Instagram at guitar_smarts. Now, if you want to support the show, you can go over to our Etsy store. You can pick up some Guitar Smarts merchandise, like some hats or maybe some phone cases with the Guitar Smarts logo on there. If you want to support the show but you're not bothered about buying some merch, then we'd be very grateful if you buy us a coffee. And you can do that at buymeacoffee.com/Guitar Smarts. But as always, we're just grateful that you come and listen to our show week in, week out. The last thing that you can do if you want to support the show is to leave us a rating and a review in your favourite podcast app, or you can follow some of the links that I've put in the description to leave us a rating and a review, which really helps us to get into the search results of people out there who are looking for guitar-based podcasts to listen to. We're really grateful that you come each week and listen to the show. Anyway, that's enough waffle from me. Let's get to it. So, Kieran,
hey.
How you doing, mate? You well?
Are you well?
We know the answer.
Well, you know I'm not. I've got man flu.
Yeah,
I've got terminal man flu. No, I'm all right, buddy. Just got a bit of a cold. It seems to be the fashionable thing to do at the moment is have a cold. Now that all the kids have gone back to school and people are coming out of lockdown.
Yeah.
It's not COVID. I've done my lateral flow test. That is clear, but it is
I hate doing those things.
Sticking stuff up your nose.
Oh, God.
Yeah. It's not.
And then at the back of the throat.
Oh.
I mean, it's making me feel, I can't stand it. It's awful, isn't it? It's not a comfortable experience.
It's not a comfortable experience, no. But no, I haven't got COVID, so our listeners won't have to hear me coughing my way through the podcast. But yeah, I'm feeling better now. I've had a coffee and I know I've got a chat with you, which always lifts the spirits, my friend.
Good to know. Yeah.
How you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right. It's been a busy week work-wise. I've been, do you remember a few weeks back I said, I'm going to sell everything. I'm going to sell everything except my guitars. I'm still planning on doing that, but I remember thinking that's quite a task to kind of take everything and sell everything.
Sure.
I'm used to, me, my methodology has always been one in, one out kind of thing. If I'm buying a new something, occasionally I'll just buy something and not sell some. But I've always had this kind of fairly zen attitude to having gear of, having something, there's a purpose that needs filling. I have something for that purpose. If I want a new one, then the thing that was in that slot already goes out the door kind of thing. Helps with affordability as well, right? And it's kind of it's a win-win situation. But this is the first time where I've decided I'm going to get rid of everything, absolutely everything.
Are you really going to do it? You're still going to do it?
Except the guitars, yeah. But I've been, there's a couple of things where I've been trying to get original boxes. So I have that LinkTree preamp pedal which I bought, but they didn't have the original packaging. It's one of the reasons why I got such a good deal with it. But I got in touch with LinkTree and they sent me a new box for it, which is I had to pay for it, but dirt cheap, only a few quid for a new. And so now I'm kind of, this is brilliant. I can sell it with proper, original manufacturer box and stuff, and that's going to help. So I've been trying to prep a few things, but it's only this week now that I've taken everything apart, cleaning everything, polishing everything up, taking lots of really good photos of all the pedals and everything. I've still got a few things to do, but I'm hoping by some point over this weekend I'll have everything that I'm selling listed, and then from there I'll see how much of it I've kind of made a spreadsheet. I've made a spreadsheet of what
this is serious.
What I hope to get for everything, what the kind of general market value is for things. So what I'd like to get based off what I'd like to get, what I'm going to list everything for, and then also a check sheet for the photos for everything, which photos I've taken, whether I've cleaned everything. Once I've taken photos and I'm happy, I'm going to pre-package everything ready to ship. So I just need to stick a postage label on. So I've kind of been organising myself ready.
Wow.
To sell.
You're committed. You're committed to this. You're in there.
Completely
you're
committed. Exactly.
Is there nothing you're going to miss? Nothing that you're thinking, I shouldn't sell that, should I?
No, absolutely nothing. That's the bizarre thing. I don't feel any hesitation here, because here's the thing, right? My guitar rig sits here at home and never gets touched unless I gig it. Whereas the rig that I'm planning to have, this probably going to be a Line 6 Helix of some sort. Ideally the LT, because I think that's the biggest bang per buck. I could also go for the Stomp XL or something like that. But what I'm going to get is going to be something that's going to sound great at a gig and that I can use at home silently, that I can use into the computer over USB, that I can control over the computer so it can sit under the desk turned on or on the desk turned on and not be used. So it just gives me so much more than I'm getting rid of. So let's see if after all is said and done, whether or not I eat my words and sell that and start from scratch again.
Well, I think it's bold. I think it's bold and I think it's brave. On paper, it makes perfect sense. And, well, more than on paper, anecdotally from people we speak to who go out with that type of rig now, it would seem to make sense, right? The bit that worries me is I don't think you've tried this rig out that you're planning on switching over to yet, have you?
Nope.
So you so you're about to sell all your beautifully acquired kit to step boldly into the unknown on the, I guess, educated position that it's going to be what you need. I mean, you're not coming from an uninformed position. Okay. Wow.
I'm happy with that risk.
It helps that you have no kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Affinity or like sentiment. That's what I'm thinking of. Sentiment for the gear that you're selling. Because otherwise that would be a tough choice. But if you're not fast, you're like, no, it's time for a big change. Let's just do it. Mm-hmm. I'm really interested as to how this is going to go. So there's some podcast topics in here for sure, right? Around how you get on with selling the gear.
Yes.
Because we've chatted before, haven't we, about the second-hand market for gear and, the ups and downs of it. And so it'd be good to see, what types of prices you can realize for this stuff, what's selling quickly.
That's right.
Versus what takes a bit more time. So that'd be cool to observe. And then the fun bit is going and getting the new stuff. So have you thought that far ahead? Have you thought where you're going to look to try and, are you going to go used for this, or are you going to go?
Potentially. So it depends on, It depends on what's available, depends on how much I make from selling the stuff, depends on what decisions I make once I've sold the stuff. Because really, if I'm going to use this exercise as a way of if I use this exercise as a rig for a rig situation, where I need to be able to sell a rig and then buy a rig that I can gig with, I need to factor in the cost of some kind of powered, full range, flat response cabinet. So depending on how much I make, that has to come into play. It's highly likely I'm going to be buying second hand as well, once I've sold everything, which I'm perfectly fine with. But yeah, it just depends how much I make, really, and then how much I can make that stretch once I've done everything. But obviously I've got to take into account the fees for selling things. Part of the reason it's taken me a while is because I've been trying to do some research into, what are the best places for me to sell, and I think it's going to be Reverb, because that gives me a focused marketplace of other musicians. That is where the selling fees tend to be a lot less, and I don't have to necessarily take payment over PayPal, which means I don't lose a certain amount to PayPal. So, but I like the idea of me selling on a marketplace that is specifically for musicians, whereas eBay obviously is a large marketplace, but it's not all musicians. And then you've got things like if I do it as an auction stroke buy it now, I've been researching when's the best time to actually list things so that they end at a time that is, because you don't want to list something and it end at, 2:00 on a Monday.
Yeah. The theory is like making it end at something like 7:00, 8:00 on a Sunday evening.
Yeah, exactly.
Or even Saturday evening is the ideal, really, because that's when people will be not at work, kids will be home, going to bed, sat at home on the sofa.
That's it. You've got an audience at the time that things are about to sell. But yeah, I think I'm going to sell on Reverb, and then we'll see once I've sold everything and paid all the selling fees and whatnot, and I know how much I've got. Then I'll go, okay, maybe what I'll do here is I'll go for a Helix LT, and then with the money left over and maybe a little bit extra, I'll get myself something like a little Headrush FR cab, and that'll be my rig. Cab can stick in the corner, and I'll put the Helix under the desk for home use all the time, and then when I'm gigging, just straight out the door. It
makes sense. It honestly makes sense, mate. And as you know, and as you've seen, when I went out previously, albeit with a bigger cab and everything, unnecessarily, I must say. But when I went out with the Line 6 thing, it was great knowing that I had all of that versatility. And once I'm sure more up-to-date modeling stuff is the same principle. Once you've really figured out how to get the best from it and set it up in the right way, it's such a, exciting thing to be able to know that you can dial in all of these tones as you need it. And more importantly, as you're saying, for the situation, so you can use that same rig at home, in a studio, on a gig. It's a really liberating thing to be able to have all of those options. And for someone like yourself who's always keen on having a lightweight, easy to transport rig when you do want to take it out of the house, it makes perfect sense. It really does.
It really does.
I mean, the only reason I'm kind of talking with some degree of apprehension, I guess, is this is the opposite of what we've been brought up to believe, or and there's nothing wrong with that, because it's the future, right? It's cool, and it's not even the future, it's happening right now. Gone are the days, I think we can definitely say, gone are the days where people went out gigging even on the pub and club circuit with 100-watt Marshall heads and 4x12 cabs.
Yeah.
But that used to be quite commonplace 20 years ago.
Yeah.
That's what people went out with. Now it's just ridiculous. There's no need. So things go through a fashion and a change, but this fully committed move over to digital, effectively, which is what it is. I mean, it's an interesting one.
It is interesting, and I kind of, I'm of the opinion that nothing. I still think nothing sounds better than a really good, cranked and loud valve amp. But I think guitarists, I think we're all guilty of thinking of ourselves as this siloed thing, that kind of happens often by itself. And when we think about guitar tone and how we want things to sound, we think about it often by itself, and we're guilty of not thinking about really how it fits into the mix of the band you're in or the music that you want to play within.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the problem starts when it comes to that kind of purist tone. And, thinking about who we are, you and me, Kieran, and our audience, we're not professionals. We've always said we are, non-professional guitarists who gig for our own, pleasure, and in places where those kind of musicians play. We're not out there as session guys. We're playing in pubs and clubs and maybe weddings, and we enjoy what we do, and we do what we do because we enjoy it. And I have never really, except for some of the gigs that we've done together when we've had the good engineering, the good sound engineering, I've never really had the benefit of having my guitar sound from a decent amp being mixed properly into the sound of a band. So what's the point of having all that? What's the point of going out and buying expensive equipment that is, superlative, that's the best you can get, if it's not going to be represented properly in the context of the music you're playing with a band, because you don't have it mixed correctly. That's why I'm making this choice, because what is in a Helix? Well, it's not just the amp and cab modeling, it's the microphone modeling. You can emulate a room sound as well by digitally changing your mic positioning, and you can add digital reflections into those cab sims. You can upload your own impulse responses for your own cab simulator, and then you can XLR straight into a desk. So what your sound engineer is now getting is what sounds like a very well recorded guitar amplifier. It's not just like an amp in a room where he's now got to go, I've got to put a good mic in front of it and I've got to EQ it. It's all done now. I've got a good sounding guitar that can sit well in the mix. That's the benefit. And that's the pain point I've had the most over the previous few gigs I've done is, a good sounding rig that's been ruined by poor sound engineering to the point where I can't hear myself and it doesn't sound good out front anyway. So what was the point? I might as well have something that I know cannot fail to sound good as soon as it hits a desk. So somebody's actually got to put some effort in to make it sound bad, which isn't going to happen. So that's why I'm so confident that it's the right thing for me to do, because I don't see myself being in a situation in the future anymore where I'm going to benefit from having a great sounding, a fantastic sounding amp. I mean, you mentioned, was it Matt Lake? I had that fantastic basement. Yeah. But he's going out now with like a Strymon Iridium. There you go.
Well, he has both. He has both available, if I recall. I'm pretty sure he's got a beautiful Dr. Z amp. I think that was his when I last saw his rig set up. He's got a monstrous pedal board with some of the most beautiful pedals that he's kind of acquired, all with a nice switched looping system and everything. But he has the Strymon Iridium as well, which gives him that. And that's what I was thinking while you were talking now and I was thinking about this during the course of the week as well. Is there like a halfway house to going to this fully digital Helix route, which would involve and achieve some of the convenience stuff that you're looking for from a smaller, more compact rig? Like, for example, having like a modest sized pedal board with something like the Strymon Iridium on it. Or I just saw adverts this week. I don't know if it's brand new, but it must be if I'm seeing all the adverts on social media and stuff. I think Boss have just released a cab simulator.
That's right.
Preamp pedal called the IR200 or something. So it's got all the impulse response cabs in there. And then running that into something like, well, I don't know, just utilizing that. And I guess that's what you had before, right? With the setup you were running with and that you're selling now, you were trying to achieve that through the pedal board. But it's not got you what you wanted. So now we're going fully.
And they are, and this is the thing, the Helixes and the Fractals and things, they're not mutually exclusive of those different situations. The Helix has got sends and returns for FX loops and for things like that. So if I wanted to in the future, and I got myself a Helix, I could, if I wanted, still have a normal amp, and I can do the 4-cable method, and I could have the preamp to that amp, selectable from the foot switches, and I could go out to a PA instead of going back to the amp speaker. I could, go out to the PA and have cab simulation. You really can do everything, you want to do with these systems. So if if in the future I decide I want to have a guitar amp, it can still work with that unit. It doesn't have to be something that I either use or don't with a more traditional style setup. It can work with it. And I think that's the best part about it.
Cool, man. I'm really keen to see what this sounds like. And, for my own curiosity, because of having used modeling stuff in the past, and then, seeing the kind of pinnacle of it with the kind of Kemper stuff, where it literally is supposed to just be absolutely incredible, but the Kemper stuff comes with, a hefty price tag and the need to be a studio engineer, really, to kind of fully utilize all the potential behind it. So probably at the far end of the spectrum for your jobbing guitarists like us. So the Helix thing, I'm really intrigued by. I want to know what you think.
Yeah, well, there's things I'm intrigued about it as well, which are there's things it can do which you can't do. There's all the stuff that it can do, which is to replace, in a way of thinking, is to replace the way of working that we're used to. But there's things it can do that you can't do. So there's this fantastic channel on YouTube, a guy called John Cordy, who is a relatively young guy. He's a working guitarist, and he's really prolific. He posts about 2 or 3 videos a day, and he's always doing videos on Helix, on Fractal stuff, on other Line 6 products like the Pod Go, which is a really good product as well. All kinds of stuff. And he is always posting ideas of what you can do with these modeling things. And one of the things he just did recently was this video of setting up a really good clean sound on a Line 6 Helix. And then you can set up separate audio paths on a Helix. So you can have like parallel paths. So, you could have a guitar amp, but you could split your signal before the guitar amp and have your guitar signal going through, say, like a reverb. And then that signal can then join your path after the guitar amp. So kind of like you might do in a studio, the same kind of things where you'd have like parallel signal paths in a studio so that you're not putting effects into effects into effects, getting muddy. But what he put in this parallel path outside of the amp was an acoustic guitar simulator, and then mixed it in slightly so that he had this clean sound that had, when you listen to it, it sounded like a great clean sound, but because it had this kind of zinginess of an acoustic guitar blended in, it was just this stunning clean sound that just had punch and so much brightness, but also just body. And it just, you can't do that any other way, really, unless you have a guitar with a piezo system as well as, and some kind of expensive. so there's things like that which I'm looking forward to experimenting and coming up with tones and ideas that you can't do otherwise unless you have that kind of setup. But anyway, this is almost another podcast entirely. I mean, we've got a different,
No, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that. I enjoy, well, because we've kind of exchanged text messages and stuff on this, but we haven't really properly talked through it. And now to hear that you're fully committed, you've made a plan, you've made a spreadsheet, you're going live with the big Matt Oliver sale, closing down sale, all gear must go.
Really sorry to interrupt this interesting conversation, but if you're enjoying what you're listening to so far, then maybe what you should do is you should subscribe to the Guitar Smarts podcast. You can do that in your favourite podcast app. Go and do that now, and then come back to the show. Let's get to it. So anyway, let's get on with what we're talking about this week, which is another fantastic kind of challenge, or a list challenge that we set ourselves, just like last week's conversation, which was epic. And what we're going for here is, well, why don't you explain?
Sure. So we had a good laugh last week chatting through the greatest guitar intros of all time. We vetoed a few things that were too obvious, just to make it a bit more interesting for the audience. We invited you to participate and play along, and and we were chatting this week, and we said, well, what should we do for the podcast? We've got plenty of ideas lined up for some great episodes, but we thought, well, while we're in this vein, why don't we continue with this for a little bit and see where it goes, and try and get some audience participation going on our social media, get some suggestions from them, because there's nothing like a good, entirely subjective, totally biased list of things that we think are great for other people to kind of listen and go, that is absolute nonsense. What are they talking about? It should be this. It should be that. Why didn't this make the list? I mean, that's the reality of it, right? It's these lists week's and this week's list, to answer your question, is the greatest guitar solos of all time. I mean, look, this could be like a 17-hour podcast if we set our minds to it.
We could go deep here, couldn't we?
We could go really deep. But the kind of fun element of this is we've got to force ourselves to make some choices and stick to our guns on this. Yeah. It's entirely subjective, which is a nice euphemism for me saying it's basically wrong. It's just our own opinion. But
it is. You're right. It is entirely. We're not telling you you're wrong. We're not saying this is it. This is what this is what I think and what Kieran thinks. Yeah. Yeah.
Today, basically in October 2021, this is how we feel right now. This could all massively change tomorrow. But what comes from it, I think, is the ability for the audience to kind of make their own mental list as they're going along and hopefully get some sense of satisfaction if we mention one of the songs that's on their list because they agree. But more interestingly for me is when we really anger people where they just go, no, that's complete nonsense. Yeah. So tell us where you think we've got it completely wrong, because we'd love to know. But also what I get from these chats with you, mate, is I often get something to go and listen to myself that I haven't heard before. Because as much as we know each other really well and have chatted about music for years together, there's so much still untapped that I haven't listened to that you kind of open my eyes and ears to. So I kind of like it. I kind of like it for that. So the way we thought we'd do it, and I don't know if we're going to be able to stick to this or not because I found it quite challenging as I was doing it, but I said, well, why don't we come up with what we think is the best guitar solo per genre? And there's so many genres as well. We're not going to get into all the weird and wonderful ones, but we're going to stick to like the traditional kind of obvious rock, metal, blues, etc. kind of genres. We're going to try and name what we think is arguably the best solo, arguably being the key word, and maybe some honourable mentions as well. And let's see where we go. Let's see how many we both thought of that were the same. Because last time we did this list, we had very little overlap.
Yeah, exactly. So I'd be surprised if we haven't clashed a little bit more in this, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
But maybe that's a good thing. Who knows?
Yeah.
Now, one of the things we did with last week's list is I decided that we'd make a Spotify playlist of it. So we'll do the same with this one as well, okay? So we've got our iconic Guitar Smarts intros playlist, which is available. You can find that on last week's podcast in the description. Cool. And in this week's podcast in the description, I'll put a link to the Spotify playlist for all the songs that we mentioned today. And I say all the songs because, like you said, you just explained, we've kind of tried to do this on a genre by genre basis, right?
Yeah.
So we're looking at rock, metal, blues, jazz, country, and pop. Yeah. Okay. So, and I've got more than one. I've got what I think is my favorite for that genre, and some, what do we usually call it?
Honourable mentions.
Honourable mentions. That's it.
Yeah. Same. Yeah. I tried to
runners up.
Yeah, exactly. Same. I've got the same. I tried to limit the numbers, but like anything, when you get into this, you go, well, I can't not mention this one or that one.
Yeah. But, oh, by the way, just before we carry on, I've just got to say, I think I've earned the right for a few weeks now to mention his name because I've not said it for quite a while. But
you haven't. You've been restrained.
I have. I've been very restrained, right? Steve Lukather. Okay.
Who's that?
Well, he was the guitarist in Toto, still is. I was kind of just listening to some random stuff on Spotify. I was listening to like a yacht rock kind of playlist thing.
Yeah, I know the one. It's a good playlist, that one.
Yeah. And there was some other stuff came on, and I started another radio. Like on Spotify, you can start a radio station based off a song that you like. Yeah. And I swear, every time something came on, and I was like, "This is really interesting. Never heard of this person. Never heard of the song. Never heard of what it is. Whatever. I'm going to go and look up who's playing on that." And I swear, right, this happened yesterday, probably 5 times with 5 different artists that I've never heard of, and 5 different songs from a similar era. Who was the session musician? Who were the people in the band? Steve Lukather on guitar. It was invariably Jeff Porcaro on drums. Steve Porcaro, and it was sometimes David Hungate on bass, who was the original Toto bassist, and it was quite often Mike Porcaro on bass.
Yeah.
And just like, it's literally every time I've gone, oh, this sounds great, it's literally been Toto as the session
it's amazing,
man.
isn't it?
With a bunch of other people as well. It's not, it's not just those guys in the studio. I just thought I've got to mention it again because, we go on about Steve Lukather a little bit on the podcast, Toto, jokingly, but I think their legend is justified. But anyway, let's get on with it. Somewhere there is a Spotify engineer listening going, my algorithm is the best thing ever. It's just like you've just validated every late night, every kind of blood, sweat and tears they poured into that algorithm. So what you're basically saying is, Matt, is Spotify recognized what you like and found more of it for you, but did it in a way that was like under the radar. That's amazing. No, I think what you're saying is that's probably more likely, but what I'm claiming is that the band members of Toto were never out of the studio for
that is also
1979 to about 1985.
Yeah, and that is also true, right? I mean, they were the session band of session bands.
I think both are true. I think they were always in the studio, and I think the algorithm is tricking me into thinking that what is true is actually true. But anyway, I don't know. Could be both. It
proves that the radio function in Spotify absolutely does work, doesn't it?
It does.
It really does work.
It kills it. Anyway, look, we're about half an hour into our podcast and we haven't started.
Let's do a quick fire subjective list of solos that will either delight you as a listener or enrage you.
Fantastic.
Please come and tell us which it does. Right, let's go.
Let's start with rock, shall we?
Let's start with rock.
Okay.
We're not vetoing any today, are we?
Not vetoing any. No, So I'm gonna tell you what I've got for rock. I've got 4. Okay, which is 3 honourable mentions and 1 favourite. One that I think is the best. First honourable mention: Free Bird, Lynyrd Skynyrd.
Yeah, Free Bird.
As much as we make fun of that song, or people make fun of it, or people shout it out, you got to admit that full-length guitar solo is epic. Okay,
it is epic.
Second honourable mention for me: Sweet Child of Mine, Guns N' Roses.
Nicely done, sir.
Third honourable mention, and this was nearly number 1.
Yeah,
Beat It, Michael Jackson, Eddie Van Halen solo.
Nice.
And I'm sure nobody's going to be surprised at all that my favourite choice for a rock guitar solo is Rosanna by Toto. And I'm not talking about the outro solo. I'm just that little 8-bar solo is the perfect 8-bar guitar solo,
isn't it? I think you're veering into soft rock there, but with these, that's why we can blend some of these genres, because otherwise we'd be here all day. So man, it is just a great solo, and I think the epitome of that is something that you've talked about before, which is something that adds its own melodic contribution to a song, which in its best execution you can hum or sing that solo because it is such a great memorable piece of composition that it becomes very much part of the song. And as a covers gigging guitarist or something, you would just go, well, if we're doing that song, that solo has got to be replicated note for note. It's so iconic. And I think the Rosanna one definitely sits in that camp for me.
Agreed. What have you got, dude?
Nice. So I got 4 as well. In no particular order for the runners-up, as you'll already know, and some of our listeners will know, Dry County, the Bon Jovi solo. I don't know what it is. Or maybe it was just a part of my youth, that solo, or maybe it was always... I think it is, but it doesn't often get talked about in the lists of greatest solos of all time. I don't think I've ever seen it feature in a list of greatest solos of all time, but I just think it's a brilliant rock guitar solo. So there you go, Dry County, Bon Jovi. Hendrix. I'm not the biggest Hendrix fan in the world. I mean, I think the guy was a genius and a pioneer and a trailblazer and played a mean guitar. But I don't sit and listen to a lot of Hendrix stuff if I'm just going to listen to stuff. But I must say, All Along the Watchtower, the solo for that is just such a great composition of repeating licks and motifs that just complement the chords so well. And there's the typical Hendrix Hendrix kind of double stop chord stuff intertwined with like some really, really great licks.
Fair play.
It's a great solo.
Pick. I mean, there's about 3 or 4 solos in that, and they are all fantastic solos.
Yeah, I just love that. I just love that one, and it's one that I haven't ever sat down to learn in earnest, and it's on the list because I just love so many of the licks in that solo. So that's on the to-do list. Then there is people won't be surprised because I'm such a huge GNR fan. I've actually got Night Train, which is the outro solo on GNR's Night Train. I think is just a great rock solo. And number one for me was Sweet Child of Mine. So I went a little bit heavy on the GNR in that one, but anyone that knows me will know that's true to form. So yeah, Sweet Child of Mine was on mine, and
fantastic.
I just think it is. I think it just is a really well structured solo with a bit of everything in it.
Yeah, fantastic. Interesting that we've both got Guns N' Roses on honourable mentions for the best rock solo. That says a lot about Slash's ability, though, I think, as a guitarist, doesn't it?
It does.
So what's your number one?
Oh no, that was my number one, mate. That was
sorry.
Sweet Child was my number one. Sorry,
idiot. Sorry, what am I talking about? Anyway. Sorry, did I just fall asleep? No. Ridiculous of me. Anyway, okay, fantastic. So we've got best rock guitar solos, Sweet Child of Mine.
Yeah, that for me,
and Rosanna from me.
And Rosanna from you. Great.
Fantastic. Okay, let's move on to the next genre, which is metal. We chose metal for this. Do you want to make a start?
Yeah, sure. So I had to have in metal a Dimebag Darrell solos from Pantera, because the guy was just an incredible metal guitarist. But I mean, he was an incredible guitarist, full stop. He could play so many different genres, but obviously made his way into the Hall of Fame with Pantera and the songs that he did. And I think you've got to be pretty much into your heavy metal music to kind of revere Pantera as one of those bands. But for me, yeah, they're just a great metal band. And there's a album, Cowboys from Hell, which is absolutely superb, which that title track in itself has a great solo in it. But I chose the track Cemetery Gates off that album. It's a great metal solo, and more importantly honors one of the greatest metal guitarists that ever was, Mr. Dimebag Darrell. It's a great solo. If you don't know it, go and check it out.
I'll check that out. And again, I'm not a huge metal fan, but obviously I know of him and and his legacy, and I need to check out more of what he's done.
Yeah,
sure.
he had an interesting legend around him. I mean, as it goes, he was one of these virtuosos from a very young age. He used to go around winning all these guitar competitions as a kid, and at a very early age, one of those prodigies that could just blaze on a guitar in loads of different genres, and ended up in that metal band. But just a great player. When you break down some of his playing, there's some incredible blues motifs in there. There's some great rock playing. What I like about his guitar playing is you can hear all of the different disciplines and facility that he has. It's not just full out metal shredding, sweep picking kind of shenanigans. It's not just like Dragon Force, great band. I mean Through the Fire and Flames is arguably one of the best metal solos. It didn't make my list because it just doesn't do anything for me in the same way. It doesn't have that emotion behind it. Plenty of people would disagree, but there you go. So that is that one. Do you want to go next, or do you want me to do all of my metal ones?
Yeah, do all of yours. Let's do a whole list each time, I think.
Okay, so I don't know if this fits into metal or not, but this is where I stuck it. And that is For the Love of God by Steve Vai.
Oh, fantastic.
It's not very metal-y, but it's kind of, I guess, progressive metal.
Yeah, you could say that. And I think that's fair enough, yeah.
That is a great... I mean, is it a solo? It's a fully instrumental piece, really, isn't it? But I had to have that in there somewhere. It's just a great piece of guitar playing.
Yeah.
So For the Love of God by Steve Vai. And then for me, in the number one spot was The Unforgiven by Metallica off the Black Album. I just think that's a really beautifully composed solo.
That's a fantastic choice.
You like
Excellent.
that one?
Yeah, I do. That's brilliant. I kind of looked at the Black Album as well. I didn't choose one from the Black Album, but so for my metal choices, again, like I said before, and I'm not a big metal fan. I never grew up listening to a lot of metal, but I do like Metallica, and I only have one honourable mention on my metal list, and that is a Metallica song from And Justice for All, which is One. So the song One by Metallica from And Justice for All, for me, is a honourable mention, because fantastic intro solo, really chilled out at the beginning. It's an epic song that has everything you'd expect from a metal band in, especially around that time when they were just about to, I mean, that's the album, I think, before the Black Album, so there's tastes of that more kind of, epic sounding, they're thinking about larger arrangements now, and One is I think the best song of that album. It's just got a great intro solo, which is more kind of it's a clean sound, it's more of a gentle thing, whereas the main song in the middle is epic as well. But that's not my number one. So my number one guitar solo for metal, and I don't think people look at this band as metal, but when they first started, they were touring with metal bands, and they were touring on metal festivals, and they were kind of regarded as a metal, but because most of the songs were kind of like, a lot of them were in major keys rather than heavy metal sound, heavy metal guitar playing, but a lot of it was kind of happy and in a major key. You don't really remember them as a metal band. It's Van Halen I'm talking about. So my number one is Eruption by Van Halen, because I think it's just one of the best guitar pieces ever of any genre, really. From the first album, I mean, imagine listening to that, hearing guitar playing like that. It's full on song. It's just a solo. It's not even a song with a brilliant guitar solo. I'm going to be really controversial. So that's me, number one, Eruption by Van Halen. It's just a solo. Yeah, it is.
Nice. I don't know. I mean, Eruption is one of the best pieces of guitar playing ever laid down, for sure, by an absolute master. I don't know. I agree with you. I tell you what it reminds me of. Oh, people are going to hate me for this. It just reminds me of, like, every time I hear it, it reminds me of like Bill and Ted. I mean, I love the solo. It is epic, right? But all I think about is just like, it's just like every Bill and Ted sketch, like concertinaed into one.
Just, when they do that thing.
Yeah, that's what Eruption is to me. That's all it is. It's just like this. Yeah, it's just Bill and Ted, except the guy can really play like that, and that's that's the difference.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It was Steve Vai anyway. He was doing all of the Bill and Ted stuff.
Was it Steve Vai?
Yeah, I thought it was. Wasn't it?
I think you might be right. I think you might be. I didn't know if some of it was Richie Kotzen or if some of it was Paul Gilbert. Actually, there's a question.
Oh, let's take that to Google.
You're going to take it to Google. Who played guitar?
I'm taking it to Google. In true Joe Rogan style, why don't we just take it to Google right in the middle of the podcast? So Bill and Ted guitar. Right, here we go. What does Google say? Oh, it doesn't. It's not even telling me. That's disappointing. I think it was Steve Vai.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, I think it was Steve Vai.
Cool.
Anyway, there we go.
Shall we move on to blues?
Yes, let's.
Right, okay. I'll make a start. So I've got two honourable mentions. Number one honourable mention is a song called Lay It Down by Matt Schofield. I'm a big Matt Schofield fan.
Ooh,
I think he's a superb blues guitarist of that kind of, Robin Ford style of bluesy.
Yeah.
He's got a really great kind of in and out playing sensibility, just some really nice, sophisticated blues playing, but still very kind of traditional blues songs and sounds that he does. And my favourite solo of his is from an album he did about 10, 12 years ago called Lay It Down, and it's the title track of that album, Lay It Down. Does a superb guitar solo at the end of that, which is just perfect. Build up, just constantly building and building to the end, and I love that solo.
He's a great player. He's really great player. His luthier lives not too far from where I live. He lives about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And Simon, he makes these...
what's his name?
It's SVL Guitars, isn't it?
That's it, SVL Guitars, yeah.
Yeah, we need to tap him up and see if we can get him on the show, because he's producing some beautiful guitars, and basically whatever he produces, Matt Schofield plays now almost exclusively. So he's definitely churning out some great guitars. I'll drop him a line, see if we can get him on the show. That'd be great.
That would be fantastic. I think he's an incredible luthier. My next honourable mention, Lenny by Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Yeah, nice.
Because again, the whole thing is just a fantastic expose of guitar playing in that genre. But my number one choice for my favourite, and I think this is because a lot of it about my childhood, really listening to blues when I first got into guitar. My favourite blues solo is Crossroads Live by Cream. So obviously this is Clapton. This is from the Cream Wheels of Fire album. So there was a live version of Crossroads on that album. Again, two great guitar solos. He does a middle solo and then he kind of does a second solo, which is just absolute fire. It's just a guitar explosion rather than anything. He starts off with this incredible intensity and he maintains that intensity through the entire solo, which I think is about 3 choruses long, 3 12 bars long. So just incredible. Just my favourite blues solo of all time, without a doubt.
Oh, I'm pleased to see some Clapton on there, mate. I knew there would be somewhere, and that's a great choice.
Yeah.
That's a really great choice.
Cool.
Love it. I mean, it's a really difficult one, isn't it? Especially for us, because we love our blues music. So this is probably the one genre where I was like, okay, this is going to be really tough to make a choice.
Yeah, that's what I felt.
Because there's so many. So I thought I'd throw in a couple of wild cards for our listening audience as well, right? So I'm going to start with my obvious ones, which are Old Love, Clapton.
Okay.
It's got a bluesy, rocky kind of vibe, but for me, that's one of my favourite Clapton solos. Another obvious one, that intro first solo by B.B. King on The Thriller's Gone is just... it's evergreen, right? You think you've listened to The Thrill Is Gone enough times in your life, but you listen to that intro solo, man, that just kills me every time.
Absolutely.
I listened to it again this morning just to make sure, and yeah, it's just nuanced. It's just note choice perfect.
Yeah.
Then my couple of wild cards for people. I know I'm taking a bit of a liberty here. It's just becoming a long list of great blues solos, but there's 2 more that I want to mention before I get to my number 1 slot. And this is bringing it a bit more up to date, more kind of recent times. So one is a solo on a song called The Great Flood by Bonamassa. Obviously, Bonamassa is an incredible blues guitarist. There's, arguably hundreds of songs of his that you could pick that have got great solos on them. But if you listen to The Great Flood on a really nice hi-fi system or a really decent set of headphones, and it's not his normal, 100 mile an hour blistering solo playing. It's very deliberate. It's very nuanced. The tone is just, you can hear a beautiful Les Paul through a tweed amp in a really, it's just reproduced the sound of his rig there just so perfectly. Yeah. And it's a great solo for me. It's one I come back to time and time again.
Yeah.
To test out AV gear, and it's a really great blues solo.
Fantastic.
And then the other one that gives me the guitar face kind of thing is a very new talent. So Chris Buck, who is just a phenomenal guitar player, in my opinion.
Yeah, he is.
And his track with Buck and Evans, his band, called Slow Train.
Yes.
The solo on that is just, to me, so expertly crafted in terms of repeating motifs, in terms of taking the listener on that journey of starting in one place and then just constantly building them up to this kind of brilliant, crescendo at the end of that solo. It's just, every time I listen to that now, I'm just like, how is this solo not being talked about more openly? It's just phenomenal. It's an absolute great solo. So Slow Train by Chris Buck and his band Buck and Evans is great. And then, so my number 1 is an evergreen track, which is, again, Stevie Ray Vaughan gets mentioned in our list. So this one for me is Texas Flood by Stevie Ray. It's just all of his angst, all of his overbends, all of his rip roaring, frustration just thought out on that guitar neck.
Yeah.
He literally rings out that guitar neck, and you can hear it. You can hear it in the studio version of that, let alone any live performance. He just rings out those bends, which is the epitome of the blues to me, where you can feel somebody's frustration and pain.
That's such a great choice, man. Yeah, Texas Flood. Wow, gotta go and listen to that. If you've never heard that, you've got to go and listen to it. That is an amazing, like you say, so intense. Such an intense performance, isn't it?
It is.
Great slow blues. You can't beat a slow blues for just ripping guitar solos, I don't think.
Yeah, man.
You know,
it's difficult as well. It's an art form, right? Yeah. I mean, to be able to hit those changes and pick those notes that inflict the intensity that you want. Yeah. I mean, anyone can just like blaze a minor pentatonic over a slow blues and it'll sound half decent, but there's that next level of kind of thoughtful playing, which just makes people just go, oh, that hits differently.
Exactly. Yeah. It's kind of, it's the build up, isn't it? And then, it's absolutely brilliant. Right. Let's move on. Let's move on to jazz, which is a difficult one, not being a massive jazz fan.
I was way out of my depth on this one.
So, yeah, I mean, me too, I think, but I'm happy with what I've chosen.
Yeah.
Shall I go first?
Please.
Okay, so I've got a few honourable mentions here. First honourable mention for me is a song called What About Me by Snarky Puppy from We Like It Here album 2014. I actually don't know who did the solo, because they have three guitarists. And I couldn't find, or at least not in time for this conversation, couldn't find a credit for who did the guitar solo. So it's either Bob Lanzetti, Mark Lettieri, or Chris McQueen who did the guitar solo on that song. But fantastic, inventive guitar song. Not very traditional jazz, but I would put them in jazz for this conversation. The other honourable mention I had was a cover of Isn't She Lovely by Birelli Lagreen and Sylvain Luc from the 2000 album Duet.
Yeah. It's more like a gypsy jazz thing, isn't it?
Like a gypsy jazz thing. Yeah, those two guys come from that kind of style of guitar playing, and they do an instrumental cover of Isn't She Lovely, and they both take a solo during a verse kind of thing.
That's brilliant. It is brilliant.
Two beautiful guitar solos.
I love gypsy jazz. I really do. I need to listen to more gypsy jazz.
Really great. I mean, like, that's like jazz shred, gypsy jazz, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
My last honourable mention is a song called Phase Dance by Pat Metheny Group from about 1978.
Oh, yeah, Pat Metheny.
Great song. Probably my favourite of Pat Metheny's. Really nice guitar playing in. Again, a master of playing over changes, as any jazz guitarist should be. Pat Metheny just plays fantastic melody, great melodic development, but brilliant guitar playing as well. But my number one choice is a song called Imperial Strut, which is by a band called the Yellow Jackets, and it was when Robin Ford was the guitarist in the Yellow Jackets. So their first album, which I think their first album was called Imperial Strut, I could be wrong, but that song has a fantastic guitar melody in, and then the solo he takes after they've done the melody a couple of times is just absolute gold. That's my favourite in that kind of genre, is Imperial Strut by the Yellow Jackets.
Nice, good choices, man. I'm not familiar with many of those, a couple of them, but not all of those. So I'm excited to go and listen to some of those on our Spotify playlist that we do at the end of this.
Exactly,
that'd be cool, man. Yeah, I'm a bit out of my depth with jazz. My extent of my jazz knowledge effectively extends as far as George Benson and Wes Montgomery, and that's pretty much it, really.
Some jazz guitarists would probably argue that those are all you need to know.
Well, that is all I know, so that's good. No, I do know a few more, but those are the ones that I probably listen to where... Yeah. I mean, I love jazz as a genre, but in terms of people's guitar playing, that arrests me and makes me go, oh, I wish I knew how to do some of that. Those are the two that I keep coming back to. It was an old next door neighbour of mine that got me into George Benson, actually. A lovely lady. It was in her 80s, but really enjoyed her jazz music, and every week went to a jazz club to listen to live jazz. And she was just a huge, like, really glamorous lady who sadly passed now. But I remember one birthday that I had, she knew that I'd just started getting into vinyl.
Okay.
And she was a neighbour, and we'd often go around and have drinks and stuff. We got on really well with them, and we'd have dinner there. And for my birthday that year, she basically brought all her vinyl that she'd amassed over the years. She didn't have a vinyl player herself anymore. You know, even in her 80s, she'd switched over to CD and streaming music and all of that to listen to. She said, I've got all this vinyl here that I just haven't listened to in years, but it's all great stuff. You know, take whatever you like. And I said, I can't do that. She was like, no, please do. She said, take all of it and borrow it. And then anything that you like and want to keep, you can keep, because I'd rather it got used rather than not. And so I had some of this stuff from her, and the stuff that I ended up keeping was basically a load of George Benson stuff, because it immediately I was just blown away by his playing. It's absolutely phenomenal.
He's ridiculous. I mean, well known obviously for he had a lot of fairly big pop hits, didn't he?
He has, Give Me the Night and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. But he's an incredible guitarist as well, not to be forgotten.
Yeah, he does this beautiful stuff where he like kind of does the vocal phrasing over the tops of his solos, like simultaneously.
Yes.
So he's like singing his solo while he's playing it as well, which, you know, can often sound like really cheesy and cliched.
Obnoxious, yeah.
A little bit obnoxious. You know, it's almost a little bit Anchorman, you know, to kind of do that, isn't it? Yeah, but when he does it, it's not.
Totally Ron Burgundy, yeah.
It is, yeah. In the wrong hands, it is completely Ron Burgundy. Yeah. But in George Benson's hands, it is nothing but like super cool.
Yeah,
so yeah, there's some great tracks where he does that. But anyway, I've picked one track, which is Weekend in LA. If you haven't heard it, go and listen to it.
No, I haven't heard that.
Yeah, it's just the epitome for me of brilliant jazz soloing. And I have to thank my friend and neighbour for turning me on to George Benson and that particular track, which I love.
Fantastic. So that's your only choice for jazz?
Yeah, that was it, mate. Well, Impressions by Wes Montgomery is also a great track. That's kind of probably one of his quintessential tracks as well, which is good. So that'll be my other honourable mention.
Yeah, fantastic, good stuff. Well, let's move on to country. Do you want to make have you got many choices for country?
No, massively out of my depth on this one as well. I think what this has taught me is I need to step out of my genre comfort zones a little bit more. Exactly. Not everything in life is rock and blues.
Yeah.
So basically anything by Albert Lee, because he's just ridiculous, frankly.
Yeah.
I did a bit of Brad Paisley's an incredible player. He's got some great stuff. There is a track by Albert Lee called Country Boy, which I think is just a tour de force of kind of like chicken picking country goodness. It's just phenomenally fast.
Yes.
Country playing. It's not really my kind of thing that I would listen to a lot, but you can't help but be arrested by how amazing the playing is. So I would say, just anything by Albert Lee, and particularly Country Boy, I think is a great track. Mm-hmm. But my choice, and this is where I might enrage some people, I put in, I don't think this is country, but for me it is. It kind of sits in that genre. And that's Midnight in Harlem by Tedeschi Trucks Band. I think that's got a country. I think that's got a country enough vibe.
Yeah, it has. Do you know what? Yeah, I think you can probably put Americana in the same kind of area as country. And I think a lot of what Tedeschi Trucks do is Americana.
It's folk Americana type stuff, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good shout there. I hadn't thought about. Wow, what a great song that is. That's just a great song, Midnight in Harlem. Fantastic. So those are your choices.
That's it. That's all I got.
So mine for country, I've got two honourable mentions. One of them is Country Boy, Albert Lee. So that's that's only the second time I think that we've had a same mention. When you said Sweet Child of Mine, I said Sweet Child of Mine earlier on. We've both said Country Boy. How bizarre is that? So Country Boy by Albert Lee, fantastic country guitar playing. And then my other honourable mention is a song called Hot Wired by Brent Mason. Brent Mason's not really a big country artist. He's a country session player.
Okay.
Dare I say it, he's the Steve Lukather of the country genre. I mean, he's on everything. If you've listened to, anything by Shania Twain or anybody like that, he's often the guitarist on that. He's still an incredibly prolific session guitarist now. He's actually a really good follow on Instagram, because half the stuff he posts on Instagram is him in sessions. musicians playing stuff and recording stuff now. But if you've ever watched an episode of Friends as well, all those little guitar set things that are in between, a lot of that is Brent Mason that he wrote for Friends.
Yeah.
So an incredible country guitarist, one of the best out there. But my number one choice for country is from a song by the Eagles. It's not Hotel California, but it's from that album, and it's a song called Try and Love Again, which I think has just got a perfect guitar solo in it. It's not traditionally country sounding, it's not chicken picking or bends or lap steel kind of sounding stuff. It's a very normal guitar solo in a very nice country song, and that's my favourite.
Cool, man.
By far.
Oh, that's great. That's a great choice. I didn't think of some of the Eagles stuff, which does go very into country stuff, doesn't it? Damn.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Good choices, man. Okay, we're into the last and final category of pop.
Yeah, into pop.
Just mad pop. What does pop mean? What does that even mean?
Yeah, I know. I think we all know what pop is, really. I guess, But yeah, you're right. It can be. I mean, I haven't got anything in my list from the last 20 years, which it makes you wonder, is it pop anymore if it's not on the radio? But
well, it is on some sort of radio, but it'll probably be on greatest hits of the 80s.
Yeah, exactly. So shall I start?
Yeah, go for it, buddy.
Cool, okay. So I've got a few honourable mentions. So number one, and this is the youngest, most recent song on my list for pop guitar solos, and that's Don't Look Back in Anger by Oasis. Which is a great guitar. You got to admit, that is a fantastic guitar solo.
Don't get me wrong. I was a huge Oasis fan back in the day, and what a great choice. There are so many. Yeah. These aren't flash guitar solos that Noel did, but, in the same way that they looked to the Beatles for their inspiration in terms of just creating something that was melodic and part of the song that you could sing along to as a solo, they did that on so many of their tracks.
He uses some really great soloing techniques. So there's a lot to be learned from that solo, like the call and response. The way the solo open, he does that little da-da-do, and then he does that bit again, but goes to a different place after it, which is classic kind of call and response, melody building. It's a really great guitar solo from somebody who is just not thought of as for their guitar playing at all. Somebody who's thought of for his songwriting and for his relationship with his brother. That's basically what Noel Gallagher's famous for. Not for guitar soloing, but that for me is an absolute classic pop guitar solo.
Yeah, it is.
But it's not my
favourite.
favourite
choice. No.
My next honourable mention for brilliant pop guitar solos is the guitar solo Mike Landau did in How Am I Supposed to Live Without You by Michael Bolton.
I love that solo.
It's amazing. It's an amazing guitar solo. It's super.
It really is.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is just, I love playing that solo. I can't say I love the song. It's not a bad song. You have to be in the mood for that song, but
I like that song as well.
Fantastic guitar solo.
I like the song as well.
And it kind of leads, because there's a key change as well in that song, and the key change happens during the end of the solo. So it's a nice little kind of lesson in how to work with a modulation in a song. Yeah. My last honourable mention is the guitar solo from The Power of Love by Huey Lewis and the News. This is a great pop guitar solo. Great song and a really fantastic guitar solo in that as well. But my number one choice is the guitar solo from Dancing on the Ceiling by Lionel Richie.
Oh, and who played that guitar solo?
I don't know, actually. I didn't check who did that solo, Kieran.
No. Don't know. If anyone knows out there,
I wouldn't be surprised if it was Steve Lukather, I think.
Oh yeah, you think? Yeah,
I think it's Steve Lukather.
Maybe.
No, it was super guitar solo though. It's an amazing guitar solo.
It really is. It really
nothing
is. Nothing
particularly flash or anything like that, but it's just perfect for the song, and it's a really cool little melody that adds something, and just a big fan of it. It's just perfect for me,
mate. I think it's an absolutely fantastic choice. It's a really, really good solo.
Fantastic, thank you. Cool, right? So that's me. That's my list, and
that's what your choices are.
That's all my choices. Yeah. So what are your pop guitar solo choices?
Okay, I'm going to blaze through these quite quickly.
Cool.
I had Rosanna in there. I classed that as pop.
Okay.
Rather than rock. You went with rock for that one, but I put that in pop. I'm sure we're both right. Rosanna had to be in there. Honourable mentions. I mean, how is this an honourable mention? But Beat It. Michael Jackson, Eddie Van Halen, incredible solo. Not my favourite guitar solo in a Michael Jackson song, though, which is actually Give In To Me, where Slash played the solo on that. That is one of my...
That's one of... Yeah. And tone as well. The tone of that. I mean, his martial tone in that song is just unbelievable. That's an epic song as well as epic guitar. I mean, there's a couple of fantastic solos in that, isn't there? He does a chilled out solo after the middle bit, and then the outro solo is just ridiculous.
When you listen to that solo, though, I think it's probably, I mean, when you read his autobiography, he just talks quite nonchalantly about the fact that he just kind of went in, did the session and walked out again, and that was it. But if you listen to the way in which that solo sits on top of the background chords, which are pretty simple, the melodies that he's come up with and the way in which he kind of harmonies and also does a sort of call and response stuff to Michael Jackson's vocals in it, it's actually really clever and really nuanced. And some of the phrasing in his solo, you think, where did he get that from to fit over that?
Yeah.
And some of it is intrinsically Slash, and some of it is just like he really did listen to what you could do with the space and where it sits with the vocals and everything. Yeah. And that's why that solo works. It's not just the speed and the tone, which you're right, are phenomenal. It's some of the phrasing in that is just so complementary to where Michael's vocal lines are going that you just go, wow, that's really nicely done.
Absolutely.
As a piece of session work. But my number one track under pop is Purple Rain. Prince.
Of course. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's what it should be. That's the first one you've mentioned where I've kind of gone, that's the correct answer.
Yeah. Well, it's just, I mean, it's the song, isn't it? It's arguably the best pop song of all time as well. But still, when that solo comes in with all the angst and those bends, you just go, yeah, that's it. Yeah. That's absolutely it.
Amazing choice, man. That is just epic, isn't it? But that probably is the best song of all time as well. You're right. There we go. Best solo from the best song of all time. I think we did it, dude. We did it. That's a good list. We did it, buddy. And like we said at the beginning, we're going to make a playlist on Spotify of all these songs of yours and mine. And these are the best solos from the best genres, in our opinion, today. There we go.
Good work, buddy. Buddy, I got a dash, but I'll speak to you next week.
Fantastic, buddy. Have a cracking week. I'll speak to you next week. Have a good one.
Cheers, Matt. Take it easy.
All the best, mate.
Bye.
Ta-da, bud. Thanks so much for listening this week. Hope you enjoyed that podcast. And remember, there is a link to the Spotify playlist that we created for this podcast down in the description. Give that a press and go and follow or like that playlist in Spotify so that you can listen to all those excellent tracks that we've mentioned today. Come and follow us on our social media pages on Facebook and Instagram. Just need to search Guitar Smarts to find us there. If you want to support the show, you can buy some merch at our Etsy store, or you can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com, and the links for that are also in the description as well. Anyway, we really enjoyed this week. I hope you enjoyed it too. Come back next week for more, and we'll see you soon. Take care.